I'm sure many of y'all have recently revisited George Orwell's 1984. I read it in a book club with readers of my Substack newsletter, Civil Discourse. And I'm reminded again and again of the warnings that Orwell gives us about the rewriting of history, which is what we're seeing happen in front of our eyes. This is a part of that trajectory.
What did you make of a story? I think it was the Washington Post about Emil Bove II supposedly telling subordinates he was willing to ignore court orders to fulfill Trump's deportation policies, um, and used a foul word to describe how they should deal with the courts, showing them about being ready to stonewall judges or lie to them to get their way. Did this ring true to you at all? Because there was a named source in the story, and what were the consequences? Has this happened before? We think of Nixon, we think of perhaps other presidents who were willing to defy court orders. Is this just something different in terms of orders of magnitude, or extremely different in terms of the relationship between the executive and the courts?
So Emil Bove, just in case anybody needs a refresher with everything that's going on, was a Justice Department official. He was a former federal prosecutor, and he had been a member of Donald Trump's private legal team in the period between the first and second Trump administrations. Shortly after he came to the Justice Department, he was nominated to the Third Circuit Court of Appeals, and he was confirmed by the United States Senate as a Third Circuit judge after the incident that Pat's referring to. This happened early on in the deportation cases where apparently Trump appointees at the Justice Department were very focused on executing the president's orders to deport people to Sikot prison in El Salvador without regard for court orders. And so you may recall this notorious incident where the planes were up in the air, the judge said to turn them around. The government ultimately took the position that because they were out of U.S. airspace, the order didn't apply to them. And that's the context in which this conversation occurred. A whistleblower reported that Emil Bove told lawyers, he said, F the courts, allegedly, and that he said that they might have to ignore the court orders to execute the president's order. You know, the people with the power to hold him accountable, to determine whether the allegations against him were true, and to check him if they determined that they were true, were Republican senators in the United States Congress who voted to confirm Bove to that high position on the Third Circuit Court of Appeals without really inquiring into the merits of this situation at all. It's utterly inexplicable. It's a travesty of justice. Bove has kept a low profile since ascending to the Third Circuit Court of Appeals, but he now has life tenure as a federal judge after saying F the judiciary.
Hi, I'm Pat Morrison, one of the hosts of America at a Crossroads. If you like this video, don't just watch. Head over to our website where you can subscribe for early access to new programs, see our upcoming schedules, and connect directly with our guests in our weekly live streams. Thank you for watching. What kind of dynamics do you think are going on right now in the DOJ? For example, just today, the Department of Justice put on leave 2 officials who described the January 6th attackers at the Capitol as a mob. He essentially called a mob a mob. And this sort of, I don't know if you call it a purification process of the Department of Justice, of everyone who stands to disagree or even potentially disagree with the agenda that the Trump administration has put in place.
Yeah. You know, I write about this some in my book, drawing the comparison between the way that Trump has sanitized people who were involved with January 6th to the way post-Civil War Confederate leaders were permitted to resume civic life. Their citizenship was restored. Only a very few of them at the top served very short amounts of time in prison, despite having committed treason. And that really permitted the rise of this myth of the lost cause in the South, the romanticization of slavery and of that horrible era in American history, so that those people could become legends. And there could be this sort of notion in parts of the Deep South that the South should never have lost the war. we're seeing something that's happening at a much more rapid speed, but that's similar with the January 6th defendants, where they've been pardoned, where they've been restored to private life, where they've been characterized by the President of the United States as heroes and as patriots. And now we're seeing two Justice Department, two career prosecutors going into court, telling a court the truth and being sanctioned. They will possibly lose their jobs for this, simply trying to tell the truth about someone who is involved in January 6th in connection with a sentencing. I'm sure many of y'all have recently revisited George Orwell's 1984. I read it in a book club with readers of my Substack newsletter, Civil Discourse. And I'm reminded again and again of the warnings that Orwell gives us about the rewriting of history, which is what we're seeing happen in front of our eyes. This is a part of that trajectory.
And we'll see you again here. We look forward to your support and your continued attention to the programs that you see right now on your screen that we're going to be offering through the end of the year, a very important year with a perhaps even more important year ahead of us in 2026. I'm Pat Morrison. Thanks on behalf of all of the team here for joining us.